Hello everyone, and welcome to Final Fantasy VIII. This is a game overview, and what do I mean by game overview? Well, this is something I've basically decided to do, try it out, see how it goes. It's kind of like, well, it's not really like a review. This is where I basically go through a game, and I basically explain the core mechanics of how the game works, what happens in the game, such and such like that. And I figured Final Fantasy VIII would be a good game to do that for. One reason being that I'm in the middle of playing it right now, another reason being that it's a game I really like. And so just think of this as kind of like not like a review, but just like an explanation of what the game is, how the mechanics work, so that you get just like a general understanding of just what the game's like. Bit of a backstory about this particular game. This was my first Final Fantasy game back in 2000 when I had my 12th birthday. That's the day I got it. And I fell in love with it. I actually wanted the game before I got it because a friend showed it to me. And the only RPGs I'd played at this point was Pokemon Red and Azure Dreams. So the whole concept of RPGs was still very new to me. But when I first saw this game, I didn't understand what things meant, and that really drew me to it, because everything looked really big and complicated, and everything looked really epic, and I really wanted to get into it. And of course, I could only really compare it to Pokemon at the time. So that's what I did. I just thought, well, it's kind of like Pokemon. I mean, anyone who knows nothing about RPGs compares every RPG to Pokemon. That's just generally how it tends to be. And I was that person at the time. I knew really nothing about RPG, so I saw it as like Pokemon. But I thought it looked really big and epic and stuff, and obviously I still like it now, and the reasons I like it now are different from the reasons I was so attracted to it back then, kind of. But anyway, let's get to it. I'm actually currently in the middle of this game, in a current playthrough on Steam. These are my save files. My file number 1 corrupt for some reason, but luckily I've got like several backups. A little bit of lag, but not too much. Well, not really lag as much frame rate drop, but it's rather minute. I'm not bothered by it. Anyway, here we go. And I'll be avoiding plot spoilers if at all possible. And I purposefully saved in a location that's really generic and really average, just so you can see where I am on the map. There, put the mouse on here, that little thing there is me, and these different yellow dots are the different places I visited. Maybe I should just explain a few things about this particular version of the game. Actually, I'll just remove the map there. This is the PC version, as it's the version I got from Steam. Few changes in the PC version. Few things improved, few things downgraded a bit, and the biggest noticeable downgrade is the music. This music is actually MIDI, and it's not the same as the PlayStation version, so if you're thinking of getting this game for the PlayStation, note that the music will be better than this. Also, graphically it looks kind of different. Like, the world map, everything looks a bit more jaggedy. I think it's because it's like updated, like an updated system running older graphics, so I don't know about like the technicals, but it seems to me as though it's more like based on vector graphics, so it's like you can see like these hard edges, like this is meant to be like a forest. See, like, you can like walk through a forest there. It's meant to be like a forest. Yeah, there's a little bit of lag, and you see there's like the squares and all that. And unless you really, really, need like top PC specs and all that, it's not going to bother you. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all, because, it's Final Fantasy VIII. It's a great game from the 90s, the late 90s, so, I'm not going to expect amazing graphics. But it comes across as though the PC version is actually a bit of a downgrade graphic-wise, but whatever. I'm not actually talking about the game system, am I? One thing that I actually should point out that's different in the PC version is Chocobo World. Now, this is actually a part of the game system. I'm not going to go fully into Chocobo World, like all of the details, because there's not really much point. It's just a little game that acts out itself, and you find items. Your Chocobo finds items for you. Let's see what he's got this time. An echo screen states his attack, and those items there you can see. Nothing particularly interesting. So yeah, I'll take those items and send him back to the world, where he'll later gather more items. You can do this on the PS1 version, but you need a Pocket Station, and they are only available in Japan. So chances are if you're playing the PlayStation version, you won't be doing any of this. Anyway, I better save after that, because you know, that's Chocobo World is saved. Just to make sure he's been sent back to the world, yes. So, I'm going to be talking about how the system, how the game runs, what you do and all that. It's an RPG, as you may have guessed at this point, and there's a few things that people really, really hate about this game, and there's a couple things that annoy me about this game, but more about those later. One thing that is special about this particular game, and 7 did this as well, is that your characters themselves, look, these are our characters here, they don't have very many specific unique traits to themselves. So if you look at the status here, all these like abilities here and these here, and to an extent the stats as well, they're all generated through other means. The level is directly tied to your characters, but there isn't very much directly tied to the individual characters. And as I scroll through, they've all got these abilities equipped, but they're actually nothing to do with that particular character. That's all to do with the GFs they've got equipped, which I'll go into afterwards. So as you can see, Zell here, Quizdis and Selfie, they've got no GFs junctioned, as the game calls equipment. The Final Fantasy VIII lingo for equipping is called junctioning, and so these don't have any GFs junctioned. So as you can see, Selfie has next to nothing there. Same with Quizdis and same with Zell, because the characters are very, very what's the word? So sort of like blank slates for you to put stuff onto. But there is something that is unique about the characters, and that is their limit break. And if I go through this, like here is some that Quizdis can do, and if I go over to Selfie, that's what Selfies can do, and Rinoa, see, she's got these, and they all function differently, and I'll go into that later as well. But the main feature of this game is the GFs, and these are very, very much the core of your customization. These hold, like, pretty much all the abilities you'll ever know, and all the abilities you'll ever need, and the whole game revolves around these. If you didn't have these GFs, the game would be practically nothing, because they hold everything that you need. Now these are all the GFs I have at the moment, during my current playthrough. There's 16 in total, but as you can see I have 9. You generally, not always, but you generally get them in order, so it's like you start with these 2 here, then you get Ifrit soon after that, and then Siren soon after that, and that's generally how it goes. The last bunch of them are like secret GFs that you have to go out of your way to find. Now Tombury here, despite being the second last GF in the game, list-wise, and oh, someone, I'm getting the Steam notifications, oh well, whatever. This particular one here, Tombury, you're actually able to get this one pretty early, I've found, so that's what I've been able to do. But for the most part, you'll generally get them in order. And these are just the ones I've got right now. Now, talking about abilities, let's go into Quetzalcoatl here. I'm going to learn, and as you can see, these are all the abilities that Quetzalcoatl has at the moment. And they've all got these different symbols, and each of those symbols means something different. And some of them are completed, which means Quetzalcoatl has that ability and some of them aren't, which means I haven't learned them yet, but I can. And there's 2 pages of abilities. Every GF has 2 pages of abilities. And there's some missing here at the bottom. That's because sometimes you need to fulfill certain requirements to actually get some to unlock. Sometimes it's getting a GF to a particular level, although that's not as common. Sometimes it's you have to unlock certain abilities before... you have to be able to like learn certain abilities before others will appear. Like, for example, GFHP plus 10%, if I learn that, then GFHP plus 20% will become available for me to learn. These, as you can see, complete with an exclamation mark means that they've got them. And these numbers is about how many ability points they need to learn the ability and how many ability points they already have dedicated towards that ability. And what happens is you select an ability. So say I can select Boost here, and Quetzalcoatl will be set to learn the gathering AP to learn that ability. On just 1 second. Sorry, just adjusting something there. But I don't want him to learn Boost because that's got no use for me. I want him to learn Mag plus 40%, so I'm going to assign him to that. And as you can see, it says there he's learning 3 out of 120. And then after battles, you will gain AP. And AP will contribute into these particular abilities that you've got assigned here, so when Quetzalcoatl gets all of that 120 AP, then he will learn the Mag plus 40% ability. I have one nitpick about this, and I suppose you could call it a nitpick, but in some particular instances, this can be really annoying. This particular feature can really like get in the way sometimes. And that is that you have to pre-select the ability for AP to go into. Now this is quite annoying because say if, for example, I was to learn Boost, he only needs 10 AP. But if I beat a boss that offers 20 AP, I'll only get the 10 AP into Boost, and the other 10 AP will just be thrown out the window. I won't get it. So I don't know why they did that. Why don't they just make it so that instead of like selecting one to put AP into, you gather AP, and then when you have enough AP, you can select an ability to learn. That makes so much more sense. And I mean, this type of method would make more sense if you had to like, you know, change things around so that you could dedicate AP in one ability, and then for some reason you'd want to switch to another. But really, the game doesn't do that. It may as well just like give you all the AP. That's one thing I prefer about well, I'm not going to say, well, I don't know if prefer is the word, but one thing that 9 does that 8 doesn't do, well, 9 does this as well, but 9 has an excuse for it because you're constantly like switching out equipment that has AP going to specific abilities, so that makes sense in 9. Doesn't make sense in this, but that's just me complaining about that. There have been times where I've seen a boss coming up and I'm thinking not which abilities do I want next, but which abilities won't throw my AP away by learning an ability. So, as you can see, you have multiple GFs, all of them have their own, I'll move the cursor out the way, all of them have their own set of abilities here. And each set of abilities is unique to that particular GF, like say, HP plus 80% here is unique to, well, when I say unique, I don't necessarily mean that they're the only ones that get it. I mean, okay, HP plus 80%, not all GFs can get that, but Brothers can, it's one of theirs. Like, for example, the Defend ability, that's specific to Brothers. Not all GFs can learn Defend, and in fact, there are some abilities where only very specific GFs can learn them. So each GF has their own set of abilities. Like for example, Diablos here is the only one that can learn Enc Half and Enc Non, Time Magrifine and Status Magrifine. So basically, as you play through the game and you get more GFs, as the story progresses, more abilities will become available to you through the new GFs that you get. And it's always exciting to get a new GF for the first time and to be able to look through their list and see what they've got and what they can get compared to what the others have gotten before that. So there's different types of abilities, and the abilities for the most part do not affect the GF themselves, but rather affect the character that has the GF junctioned or you as the player in general. Because every GF you junction to one of your characters and the abilities transfer over to that character, and I shall go into more detail as I explain the different types of abilities here. Actually, what I'll do is I'll exit out of this, move the cursor out the way I keep forgetting, and I'll remove everything from all my characters. So, off with everything, yep, and Irvine too. Okay, so now every character has no GFs junctioned. They can do nothing but attacking. They could do more if they have the GFs junctioned, and I shall start off by I'll show this. So if you look at Quetzalcoatl, for example, let's have a look at some of Quetzalcoatl's abilities here. As you can see, HP junction, Vitality junction, Magic junction. I'll explain what each different types of abilities mean. Magic GF draw item card, Magic plus 20%. Okay, just look at those abilities for now. And let's go back up to Junction and Squall. So as you can see, Squall has nothing. Commands, nothing. These things here, which I'll go into more detail later, nothing. But if I go into Junction, GF, and I can choose to junction a GF. You can junction more than one GF to a particular character, but each GF can only go to one character at a time. So you have to evenly spread them for the most part. So if I go to Quetzalcoatl and I press square, yes, I'm using a PS3 controller, you can see the abilities that it has. We're only interested in these ones here for now, from Magic plus 20% upwards. If I choose to junction Quetzalcoatl, and Squall has Quetzalcoatl junctioned, then what we can do is we can now see that these abilities have become available for Squall because he has Quetzalcoatl junction, so I can now edit Squall based on what Quetzalcoatl has. So I can equip Magic plus 20%, I can equip the Magic command, I can equip GF command, and I can equip the Draw command, if I so please. If, say, I was to also junction Shiva here, let's have a look at what Shiva's got. Shiva's got a few different abilities here, Strength junction, Spirit junction, Spirit plus 20% for example. If I choose to junction Shiva as well as Quetzalcoatl, then Squall will have access to not just Quetzalcoatl's abilities but also Shiva's, so I can now equip, for example, Spirit plus 20% because that's from Shiva. But then if I was to take Shiva off, the abilities that Shiva has, I can't equip them anymore because it's all based on what GFs you have junctioned. And that also goes for this stuff down here, but don't worry about that just yet, I'll go back into that. Let's move the cursor out the way, I keep forgetting. Let's go through each of the different types of abilities and what they all mean. Because, as you may have noticed, there's different symbols here and they all mean different things. So let's focus on Quetzalcoatl to for the sake of explaining what these different abilities mean. Now, I'm not going to start with these arrows. These are junction abilities. I'll actually go through them last. Or maybe not last, but I'll skip them for now. Okay? These here are commands. This little symbol here means it's a command. Now, every GF starts with 4 of these. Magic, GF, draw, and item. A command is basically an action that you can take during a battle. Card, there is a specific command for Quetzalcoatl. Only Quetzalcoatl can learn the card command. So the only character who can use the card command is whoever has Quetzalcoatl junctioned. And you can have 3 commands equipped at a time. So, as we've learned, that Quetzalcoatl has those 4 particular commands. Squall has Quetzalcoatl junctioned. Right? So, ability. And now these are the commands. You see command. And I can choose any 3 of these commands here. So I could, for example, go magic, GF, and card. But you can only have 3 at once. If I want to use draw item, I'd have to sacrifice some of these because you can only have attack plus the 3 that you've equipped. Now, if I was to... Actually, I'll go back into that. And move the cursor out the way again. And say if I was to... Tombury, yes. As you can see, Tombury has a few unique commands, level down and level up. If I was to junction Tombury as well, then my commands, I can choose 3 of any of these. See, magic, GF, draw, item, card, level down, level up. So I can choose level up there, and I can put level down, but then I can only have 1 more. So you can only, so yeah, the more GFs that you pile on with a character that has all their own commands, you have to limit yourself. So I'll unequip all those for now, and in the meantime, I'll take Tombury off. Actually, it would be easy just to stick onto this screen here for the explanation. Oh, just knocked the microphone, sorry. Now, these ones here, this symbol here, is a... what's it called? It's like a character ability. Character abilities and party abilities are equipped to a character's ability menu. How do they work? I'll explain how they work. A character ability is basically something that affects the character, but you don't control them. So it's like a kind of like a perk or like an added effect for that character. So, for example, magic plus 20% is what Quetzalcoatl has here. Now, there are also party abilities. I'll go to Diablos here. Enk half and Enk none. This symbol here basically means party ability, and party abilities are basically, they function the same as character abilities, but they're not specific for the character, they are for the group. So for example, Enk none here reduces all random encounters, prevents all random battles, and that affects the party as opposed to just the one character. So that's why it's got that little symbol there as opposed to the other one. But they still function the same. So, if I go out of this, and I go to ability, see I've got the commands here, and now these are the character abilities. So as you can see, mag plus 20%, I can equip that because Squall has Quetzalcoatl junctioned. Now if I wanted to put more of these abilities here on, I would have to junction more GFs with more abilities that would give me access to them. So let's have a look at the GFs. Shiva, for example, Vitality plus 20% and Spirit plus 20%. Okay, so junction Shiva. And now I have access to not just Quetzalcoatl's abilities, but Shiva's character abilities here as well. So I can have Vitality plus 20%, Magic plus 20%, or Spirit plus 20%. And likewise, if I was to add Diablos, as you can see, I can equip Vitality plus 20%, these that I've already shown you, plus Ink Half and Ink None. And Ink None and Ink Half, like I said, the party abilities, but they go under the same segment here. And you may have noticed that suddenly I've got 3 ability slots here rather than the initial 2. And yeah, I'll have to explain that later. But for the meantime, let's take off Shiva and Diablos. Right. Actually, let's go back to that. What other abilities are there? Actually, I shall exit this. And I shall go back to the main GF screen. Go to Quetzalcoatl. And there's this symbol here. These 3 particular abilities here, this symbol means it's a GF ability. Now, personally, I just ignore these, and the reason is that these are the types of abilities which can come in handy if you're new to the game and you're unsure as to how to really be strategic and work around a lot of things. These abilities here are all about if you want to summon the GF to actually fight. And like I said, this is something that you do if you're generally new to the game. That's why I'm not learning them, because I'm not new to this game and I don't summon my GFs, so I have no use for them. So these are all about how much, like for example, summon max plus 10%, like increases the summoning power by 10%, GF HP plus 10% increases the GF's HP, and boost allows you to power up the GF as it's being summoned. And like I said, I just ignore these abilities. Now, there's these abilities here, but before I go on to those, I'm going to go back to these abilities, because this is the bit where people usually seem to trip up and not be able to grasp what this is all about, because this is about junctioning. And these different things here are the different statistics that the GF will allow you to junction to. Now, junctioning magic, junctioning abilities, it's all about opening up your options as to what a character can equip and what they can do. These 5 in particular, not all junction abilities are like this, but these 5 in particular, HPJ, Vita J, Mag J, and LM Attack J, LM Def J, these are all about equipping magic to your stats. Now the way that works is, well, let's go back to the junction menu. Go back to junction and go to Squall. Now, Squall has Quetzalcoatl junctioned there. Now I can junction magic. Now, see these here? These are your basic stats. If it's white, that means you can junction magic to that stat. If it's greyed out, that means you can't. Because, like before, if we look at Quetzalcoatl, HP J, Vitality J, and Magic J, that means with just Quetzalcoatl equipped, I can junction to those 3 particular stats. So, you can see here, HP, Vitality, and Magic, they're white. Now, the way this works is that if you have the junction ability, you can dedicate a particular magic spell to that particular stat. So, HP. If I click on HP, now this is all the magic that Squall has. The name of the spell and how much of that spell he owns, because you own spells in quantities in this game. And as you can see, here is the number of how much it affects it by. So 75 cures will make it go up to 656. 100 cures will make it go up to 1006. And 100 curagas will make it go up to 2706. This can be quite extreme, and the extremity of it all boils down to a particular flaw in the game, I think, but not enough to stop me from liking the game, but a particular flaw in the game that I'm not going to go into just yet, but it can be quite extreme just how much this can affect you by. So as you can see, 100 demis does that. 9 stops. See, 9 stops doesn't make it go very well. Up very far and takes it to 578. Now, there's 3 particular things that determine just how effective a particular spell is in increasing the stat. One of them is how strong that magic is. So as you can see, 100 Curas and 100 Curagas. Curaga is stronger than Cura, so Curaga is going to make it go up by more. Another thing that's going to make it go up is the type of spell that it is. So for example, with HP, curing magic is going to make it go up more than, say, like fire spells or whatever. If I go to, say, like, look, 100 sleeps only makes it go up by a little bit, same as like blinds and silence. Arrows, not that much. Estina's healing in some sort, so that makes it go up a bit more. Bio is poisoning, and that's quite a powerful spell compared to these, so that makes it go up by quite a bit. But as you can see, even though the more powerful spells make it go up by more, the more health-focused spells will do more than that. So regen, for example, which regenerates your health, makes it go up to like 3000, and that regen's a powerful healing spell. And so because it's a healing spell, it does HP more effectively. Life would do quite good as well, but I've only got 2 of those, and that's the third thing that contributes as to how effective it is. The more of a spell that you have, the more effective it's going to be. So, for example, Curagas are very powerful, but if I only had 10 of them, it wouldn't be as powerful as what it is there. And you can only junction one type of spell to each particular stat. So, sometimes you will have particular magic spells that are really good and that boost the stats by a lot, but of course, because each magic can only be going into one particular stat, what that ends up meaning is that you've got to choose where it goes. Ultima, for example, is really good for, well, pretty much everything, but I can't just put Ultima in everything, I have to choose. So yes, and you can also choose to do it automatically, so you can choose to, you can make the game automatically dedicated based on, like, oh, I want it to go into like general attacking, so yeah, it'll do that for you. Or I want to go into general magic, it'll change it around for you. Or general defense. You can do it automatically, or you can do it manually. I'm just going to remove these for now. And as you can see, let's go to magic, for example. What type of spells make magic go up? See, 100 demis makes it goes up to 42. But if you go to, where is it? See, Curaga there only makes it go up to 26. That's because, well, yes, Curaga is a powerful spell, and there's 100 of them, but it's dedicating it to magic. And Curaga isn't really magic oriented; it's more health oriented. So that's why Curaga is really effective for HP, but not as effective for magic. And it's like for Vitality, for example, which is your defense. If I go to that, see, curing actually helps. Cure spells actually makes it goes up by quite a lot there. But is there anything else? Like, if I had like protect spells, then that would work well with Vitality, for example. And I don't know if I've got anyone with any protect spells. Also, just for the record, you can't hold 100 of every spell in the game at once. There's a limited amount of slots, so you have to choose some magic that you just can't have. You can't have them all at once. Oh, and it maxes out at 100. You can't just keep adding more and more and more and more. So that's junction abilities, but that's not all of the junction abilities. If I go to GF, and I go to... which is a good example. I'm going to Junction Siren, and I'm going to Junction Ifrit, because they have junction abilities which work towards your elemental and status attack and defense. So now, with those GFs junctioned, I can go over here, and these are your elements, and over here is your status effects. If we look at the elements here, each of these is a percentage of how much of an element you attack with, that's attack, and this is defense. So, for example, I can choose elemental attack, and I can look through my magic here, and this basically contributes the element of the magic to your physical attacks. So say if I put 100 bios in this elemental attack, then that means that when Squall attacks physically, it will 100% of that attack will be poison elemental. This can be good or it can be bad, because whilst some enemies can be weak to certain elements, some can be resistant to or even absorb the element. So if I'm fighting like a monster that's poisonous, it might get healed by that attack. If I equip the 100 bios onto Squall's elemental attack and Squall attacks them, well, he's doing 100% poison damage to an enemy that absorbs poison and gets healed. That can happen. Whereas if, say, like 80%, it means only 80% of that damage is wind-based in this case. And as you can see, and it's the same thing again, where so much, it depends on how much of the spell you've got, what type of spell it is, and how powerful the spell is. If I had like Blizzaggers, 100 Blizzaggers makes it my attack 100% ice-based, whereas if I had like regular first level blizzard spells, it wouldn't raise it that high. Also to note that if you have say an attack that is 50% ice based and the enemy absorbs ice attacks, what that will mean is that they'll absorb half of the damage of your attack and get damaged by the other half, basically cancelling each other out. So you need to think about like what element you're putting onto who, because this is where junctioning isn't always a good thing, because you could screw yourself over if you put the wrong element on. Of course, you can remove it if you find you've made a mistake, but you can't do that inside a battle. I have elemental defense. Elemental defense is how much you are resistant to particular elements. And with these particular magic that I've got, here, if I equip Arrow, as you can see, that would make my wind defense go up to 80%, meaning that wind attacks would only do 20% of the damage. Now, 100 bios makes it go to 150%. Now, this star here in elemental defense means absorption. So, because 100 bios is like really strong, like poison, what that means is that if I equip Bio to his elemental defense, he will actually be healed by half of the damage that it would have done otherwise. That's what that star means. It means healing. Whereas if we go to status, attack and defense, this is where you have status effects. So for example, I could put 100 confuses on my status attack, and that means that my attack would have 100% confusion. So, taking out of the equation, taking into consideration the enemy's defense against certain status effects, if the enemy has, for example, no resistance to confusion, then when Squall attacks them, they'll become confused because putting 100 confuses onto his status attack makes it 100% confusion. Same as if I go to zombie here, and that means that attacking will have 100% chance of inflicting zombie, because 100 zombies causes 100% of the zombie effect. But you also have to take into account the enemy's resistances, so some enemies might be completely resistant to zombie, and if that's the case, then this just won't work. If they have a 50% resistance to zombie, then that means that, you know, your attack will work 100% of the 50% of the time that they're not resistant to it. And the same goes for elemental defenses, whereby status defenses. This is where you build up your resistance to certain status effects. So if I put, for example, the 100 zombies on Squall here, he will have complete resistance to zombification. Whereas, like, 98 breaks means he has 98% of a chance to resist petrification. And death, 100% chance resistant to instant death. There are some interesting combinations that you can do here. For example, I don't think I've got any drain spells here. Oh yes, I do. But drain on status attack, for example, means that if you attack the enemy, see 13%, that means if I attack an enemy, Squall will recover 30% of that damage. If I had 100 drains, then that means that whatever Squall attacks, he will cure that much. One thing that you could do, for example, is 100 deaths on attack, meaning that if you attack an enemy, you have the strongest chance of instantly killing them as much as you have. But then again, I'm just giving an example here. If you were confused and you started attacking yourself, well, you're hitting yourself with 100% death. So you could also, for example, put... Do I have confuses? I'm sure, yes. You could put 100 confuses on your status defense, so that whilst you're attacking with 100% death, you don't run the risk of attacking yourself with that, because you've got 100% resistance to confuse. So, yeah. The only other type of junction that I can think of, although actually before I go into that, it is lagging a bit. Let's go back into GFs here. As you can see, Ifrit is learning elemental defense ×2, and that would mean that whoever has Ifrit junctions could put two elemental defenses, two elements of their elemental defense, as opposed to just one. And actually, something I should have mentioned is that with elemental defense, if I go to Squall here, although I don't particularly have any here, there are particular magic spells that can grant defense to more than one element. So, I might have, for example, Ultima. The Ultima spell grants defense to all elements, and you can pile them up and build up more defense of different types of elements. If I go to status, do I have enough Esunas? Ah yes, as you can see here, 98 Esunas causes me to resist all of these particular status effects by 19%. Whereas if I was to put, say, Bio on, it would do poison by 100, Esuna does all those by 19, and they all add and contribute in different ways. And again, it is all based on like the type of spell. Like sleep spells would put you resistant to sleep. The reason an Esuna puts all of these on is because the Esuna spell is for curing status effects, so only naturally Junction 8 would actually help against a lot of effects. And yeah, just like I said, you can get like multiple of these depending on what GFs have learned. You can eventually learn like elemental defense times 4, so you can equip 4 spells to your elemental defense, and like status defense times 4, so you have 4 spells for your status defense. The other type of junction ability is actually see how I've got like 2 slots here for these abilities. These are who have I got equipped here? Junction GF, Quetzalcoatl, Ifrit, and Siren. Okay. So if I go to ability, these abilities here, these are Quetzalcoatl, Ifrits, and Sirens character and party abilities, and so I can equip 2 of those. You may recall earlier on what am I doing? Earlier on that changed. If I go to Diablos and look at his particular abilities, as you can see, he's got a junction ability here, which is ability times 3. So if I equip Diablos and I go to abilities, as you can see now I can have 3 of these abilities here as opposed to just 2 that I could have had. And you can get ability times 4, so later on, which allows you to equip 4 of these rather than just 2 or 3. Now the last type of ability that I need to mention are the menu abilities. Now every menu ability is unique to that particular GF. There's no overlap in menu abilities at all. What menu abilities do is they allow you to do things from the menu, things that you wouldn't usually be able to do. And some of them are just like general effects that like affect you as the player. So as opposed to any particular character or GF. So here we have some abilities that Quetzalcoatl has learned. Here, these 3 are the menu abilities that he's learned. And if I go over to Shiva, she's learned Ice Magic Refine. And if I go over to, is there any particularly interesting ones? Like Life Magic Refine, Status Medicine Refining, Tool Magic Refining. Yeah, and these build up over time. Like the later GFs have bigger and more powerful ones of these. And a particularly interesting one is Tombri. Now, I don't have all the GFs at the moment, so I can't show all of them, like all of these abilities. But there's one that Tombri can learn that I don't have access to yet. But see, Tombri can learn Haggle, which means that shops sell at discounts for you. Familiar, which allows more rare items to be appearing in shops. And Tombri can also learn an ability called Call Shop, and there's another GF that can learn Junk Shop as well, and they are abilities where you can access shops from the menu. So menu abilities can really come in handy because they grant greater access for you to do things, and the way that you do it is that you go into the ability menu here, and these are a list of all the menu abilities I've learned with all my GFs. So as you can see, Team Mag Refine, that's what Quetzalcoatl has. Ice Magic Refine, Shiva has that. And these are all the different things I can do. Let's have a look at, for example, Team Mag Refine. This allows you to turn your items into thunder spells or wind spells. As you can see, one M-stone piece can turn into 5 thunders. One magic stone can turn into 5 thundaras, and so on. And you can just like have a look at these, and they all give different amounts. Like one sheer feather will turn into 20 arrows. So everyone's maxed out on arrows. That's not a good example. A windmill, one windmill will turn into 20 tornadoes. So I can refine that and give a character 20 tornadoes. So for example, I could refine that and give Zell, actually no, I'll give Zell 20 tornadoes. One windmill into 20 tornadoes? Yep, do that. And then you've got like Ice Magic Refine, where you can turn items into like ice and water, in water magic. And you've got all of the different like refine abilities. Time Magic, so for example in Time Magic, Wizard Stone turns into 5 stop spells. A Black Hole will turn into 30 demis, and 1 Spiderweb will turn into 20 slows. One Dragon Fin will refine into 20 doubles. That's interesting. So yeah, you've got those. Then you've got the like Recovery Medicine turns items into healing items, so 4 Tentacle will go into a Mega Potion. Tool will turn things into tools. So as you can see at the top there, it tells you what turns into what. Mid Mag Refine will allow you to upgrade magic by turning it into others. So say for example 5 Cure spells will turn into 1 Cure spell. 5 Fire spells will upgrade into 1 Fire spell. And Card Mod, where you can turn cards into items. So for example 1 Elastoid will turn into 1 Steel Pipe. Let's do that. Yep. 1 Elveret will refine to 10 Deathstones. Yep, let's do that. And so you can do this, turning cards into items, turning items into magic, and items into other types of items. And that's really, these abilities are really how you will get most of your magic and most of your items and stuff throughout the game. And it can really, really help. It's really interesting. It's all like an alchemy of getting the abilities to turn things into other things and then actually like going through with it. I wish I had Call Shop, but I don't, so I can't show you that, but I love Call Shop. Call Shop basically is an ability Tombury can learn where you just go, okay, ability, and then you can choose Call Shop, and then you can just straight up access any shop that you've already visited. So, like, regardless of where you are, you can just like access all shops from the menu. It's really nice when you can like learn special abilities that do things like that. So, yeah, a general hint, it can be quite a bit of an art trying to appropriately choose who to junction to who. Generally what you want to do is not cause any overlaps. Say for example, I just go, okay Squall, you can junction every GF. All GFs, they're all yours. Well, okay, it means I've got like lots of access. I've got access to all these abilities. It means I've got access to all these character and party abilities. But you've got to remember a few things. First of all, it doesn't matter how many of these you have. Like, I could have like 20 of these, I can only equip 3, and these, again, I could have like 40 of these, but I can only equip like 2, 3 or 4, depending. So you don't want to do that. One problem that would cause is that your other characters would have no other GFs left to junction, so they'd be left really weak. And you generally want to distribute them rather evenly without causing overlap of abilities. So for example, say if I really wanted to get, if I wanted to allow all my characters to junction as much magic as they could, as you can see, each GF can only allow certain junctions, so I can't like just stick a bunch on one. So say if I put Quetzalcoatl on Squall there, well, is there anything else that has, see Diablos here, HPJ and MagJ, well, Squall already has the HPJ and MagJ from Quetzalcoatl, so putting those two abilities on Squall twice is just going to go to waste because he's already got them from Quetzalcoatl. I might as well give them to somebody else so that they can make use of them. And that's really it. It really is a case of trying to balance who has what abilities. So I'll go magic and try to junction these abilities to whoever. But if Squall has all the GFs that have HPJ, then no one else is going to be able to have it. It's not just for junction abilities as well. These abilities here, like if I really wanted mag plus 20% and I give Squall 2 GFs both with mag plus 20%, he's still only going to be able to equip one of them because there's an overlap in abilities. So, and it's quite a bit of an art to try to do this. We want to try to spread them out evenly with causing as little overlap as possible. And also you want to think about the abilities that they have. So, say if I want Irvine here to be the one that's like carding enemies, then I have to give him Quetzalcoatl because he is the only one with the card command. So, yeah. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm actually going to close this. I'm going to meet you back when I've loaded it back to my current setup, and I'll talk more about battles. So, see you in just a second. Hello, and I'm back. I've just finished recording that first part of the video, which was nearly an hour long. To be honest, I never know how long these things are going to be until I actually finish doing them. That's always the case. I always think they're going to be so long and then they always end up being bigger. That's just what happens. I always underestimate how long things are going to take. But anyway, I've just loaded up the file backup that I had before I took everything off, that I did to show how junctioning works. But let's have a look, see what I've actually got junctioned. My 3 main characters I'm using here is Renoa, Squall and Irvine. And as you can see, she's got 4 GFs. How many has he got? He's got 3. And he has 2. So it's not exactly completely evenly spread, but it's spread out enough so that there isn't really too much overlap with abilities. So they're pretty evenly, it's pretty well distributed. So have a look at the abilities. I've got magic, draw and card, and I've got those 2 there. I'm just showing my basic current setup here. Squall, I've been focusing on strength, so I've given him 2 strength bonuses, and he's got those. Level down and level up will becoming useful at some point, but not right now. He's got Tombury equipped, that's where they've come from. Draw, magic, draw item, spirits increasing, vitality increasing, and no encounters. Now, why would I block out encounters in the game? Now, I know a lot of people are going to go like, well, random encounters are so annoying, you might as well turn them off. Well, no, okay? It's not a case of that. It's the case of how this game functions with its level scaling. Now, I think this is probably... I would say this is perhaps the worst aspect of this game, and something that I really, really wish they didn't do. The game level scales, basically meaning that if you level up, your enemies also level up, meaning that you don't actually get stronger by leveling up. In actual fact, you get weaker. And the reason that you actually get weaker by leveling up is that, well, think about these junctions here, right? Regen, or regen, however you pronounce it, is always going to, 100 regens is always going to increase by the same amount. In this case, as you can see, it's 2,500. 100 regen is always going to increase by that specific amount. So if you start the game and you have 506 HP, although I have used a couple of HP plus items on him, so you would usually have a bit less than that. But say you start with about like 500 health, roughly that, and the enemies stats based on your 500 health, because it's level scaled to you, and you can boost it by 2,500 by junctioning 100 regens to your HP. If you were to level up so that you naturally have 2,000 HP, then the enemies are scaled to your 2,000 HP, but the regen still boosts by 2,500, and that's just slightly over double, whereas as it stands here, that's like boosting it by an extra 5 times. So you actually get better at this game. You actually do better by choosing to not level up. Now, that's a really annoying thing about this game, and I would say the worst thing about this game. So you might ask, well, if you don't level up and fight enemies, how are you going to get the AP for your GFs to learn abilities? A very specific trick is to use the card ability on the enemies, and abilities that have been carded will not give you experience, but they will give you AP. So that's what you'd want to do, and that way you can learn abilities as you go without the disadvantage of leveling up. Now here's what I'm doing. I'm actually putting off AP grinding until I'm going to try to get all my GFs first. The reason for this is that all GFs that you have junctioned all gain AP at the same rate. So if I was to grind AP early, Quetzalcoatl would max out, Shiva would max out, Ifrit would max out, the early ones would basically max out, and then the later ones would be trailing behind, and whilst they're catching up, these earlier ones would just be sitting around not learning anything. So I figured I might as well just wait till I've got all of my GFs, and then take the time to learn all the abilities. That way I have to do less AP grinding overall. It just means I don't get abilities as soon. But that's okay, because I don't need them. That is why my Diablos uses Enknon, so that I don't have to actually enter random battles. So just going to double check the abilities I have. Magic draw item. Okay, I'm just going to unequip Enknon for now. Okay. Magic GF draw item. I'll give Squall GF. Not something I'd usually use, but it's just something I want to show. And Irvine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So I'm just going to get into... Oh, this can't be good. If it's lagging, like this when it's recording, oh dear. I realised with the last video it lagged quite a bit, but I think it depends on what you're doing. The audio actually, the first hour or so, because I checked it, it didn't actually like lag on screen with what I was saying, but it lagged like audio with what was happening on screen. It seems to be going quite okay at the moment, but here are some random enemies, and I'm okay. So these are your commands here. Squall's flashing, so it's his turn. I'm actually just being really slow here because, like I said, junctioning, I've completely overpowered these enemies. They're not going to do hardly anything to me. I mean, let's have a look at how much this geezer does. 12 damage. Okay. Now. Oh yeah, we know I could draw off limit breaks. Say you want to turn an enemy into a card. What you do is you attack the enemy and then you use card on it. And the lower health it has, the more health it's likely to the more chance it's likely to be affected by cards. Kind of like a Pokeball. I guess that's why I thought it was like Pokemon. One of the reasons why I thought it was like Pokemon one time. But yeah, these are doing nothing to me. I mean, they're silencing Renault, so she can't use magic. Right? You do get experience for attacking but not killing unless you card them. I'm actually going to use the Demi spell. But the only reason I'm using Demi here is to make sure that I don't kill it. Demi's a gravity-based spell which deals a percentage of damage. It deals exactly a quarter. See, 18 damage, that's like... If 18 damage is like a quarter of its health, then a physical attack is bound to kill it, and I don't want to do that. So, I want to reduce its health. Okay. I mean, this is just not a threat. I usually wouldn't bother with this, but, you know, that's just the way it goes. Irvine. I usually call him Irvin, but sometimes I just randomly, for some reason, change the way I pronounce names. Card. Missed. Okay. And like I said, this is something I wouldn't usually do, but I'm doing it for the sake of showing. Try again. But you also want cards for another reason than just to be able to get the AP without the experience, because cards are actually useful themselves. Cards can be used in the card game in this game, called Triple Triad, and I will go into that. But also you can use card mod. Ooh, this looks like it's going to work because of the animation. Oh, no. I guess not. I'll use another demi on it. Okay, can you card it this time? No. I don't know exactly like all the different variables that go into carding enemies. I mean, there might be more, but as far as I'm aware, it is to do with the percentage of their HP. What they have, which is why Demi works so well for when you especially when you're wanting to card enemies, but also for enemies with lots of health. And it worked that time, so hooray! We got a card of the Gizad. Now we can run away. I'm running away for a purpose here. Didn't get any experience. Got an item. Got a card. LGF received 1 ability point. So, GF. See, Mac plus 40% is now 4 out of 120 as opposed to 3 out of 120. I know it sounds slow, but bosses will give you a lot more AP, and you know, this would happen over the long haul of the game. Bosses can give like 10, 20. I think the strongest like super boss in the game can give like 100 or so. I'm not entirely sure though. Oh, see, Shiva's one out of 120 of learning the way there of 104 vitality plus 40%. And now we have a card. Let's have a look at our card. Now we have another Gizad card. I originally had 1 and now I have 2 because I carded it. Cards will come in useful. And you see these numbers here and this elemental thing. It all means stuff in the card game, which I won't go into just yet. But I didn't get any experience, so I can save that. But I want to show GFs where I will gain experience and I won't want to save afterwards. I know I save more than once. I'm an RPG gamer, it's what happens. Okay, do I have an echo screen to, yeah, hear Reno from the silence? And as I showed before with cards, you can use card mod and you can turn cards into items. So for example, I've shown this before. Yeah, see, 1 there. Gizad, how much to Gizad? 1 will refine into 1 Gizad card will refine into 5 screws. So I get 10 screws from 2 of those. And sometimes it's a bit more like, it's harder, like Marlboro you need 4 for a Marlboro tentacle, or Ruby Dragon 10 for an Inferno Fang. So you can turn those into items, and then you can use these abilities here to turn those items into magic. So you turn cards into items, and then turn enemies into cards, then turn cards into items, and turn those items into magic. And magic is, as you know, needed to really boost your stats with junctioning. That is the best way to obtain magic. You can also receive cards by playing card games, and I will go into that later, but not just yet. Now, one thing to point out, I'm going to go into another battle. Okay. Whoa! Jesus! Ruby Dragon! Honest to God, I had no idea you could fight... Well, hold on. You can fight Ruby Dragons here. I honestly didn't know that. Hopefully this is not a Ruby Dragon. No, it's more of these things. Some more Gizzard and... I don't know about that spider. What is that spider called? Oh, Grand Mantis, right, yeah. Here's what people think you have to do to get magic. And this is one where you can get magic, but it's really inefficient. The draw command. Choose an enemy to draw magic from, and then choose to stock the magic, and then get someone else to do the same thing. Stock some thunders. Squirrel got 9 thunders. Renoa got 9 thunders. And I'll stock some cures with Irvine. How many cures does Irvine get? 6 cures. Now, people seem to believe that the way that you get magic in this game is by drawing over and over and over again until you have 100 of everything you can find, of the enemies that you can find. Just standing there drawing magic over and over. Do not do this, because it's absolutely stupid and pointless, and it's really slow. And anyone who says that that's what you have to do, they're lying, because it's just so inefficient to do so. But I'm going to show GFs and limit breaks. Actually, I'm going to show limit breaks first. When a character... I'm going to pause it here. When a character has critical health, or if they are in the aura status, they're more likely to be able to use limit breaks. If a limit break is available, this arrow will come up next to where it says attack. So you can choose to use their limit break. Now, limit breaks are unique to each individual character. Now, Renoa's limit break is combine. And each limit break is works differently, and I'll actually talk about that after each battle. But let's just use Renoa's limit break for now. Where's the music gone? Oh, by the way, Angelo Rush, random thing, that's just something that can randomly happen with Renoa in your party. Angelo can come out and just attack an enemy. I don't know why the music stopped. It must be like a glitch with the PC version or something. It's never happened before. Anyway, Renoa's limit break combine, and at the moment I've only got Angelo, and use limit break, and Angelo, do your thing. What are you going to do this time? Wow. See, okay, I should explain. The reason why Angelo was so powerful is because, junctioning and stats compared to their defense and all that. And I can use Angelo again. Angelo strike this time. Is this the same thing? Yeah. Sometimes he'll do different things, but that's what he's doing this time. And Angelo can learn different abilities, and I'll talk about each individual limit break afterwards. But I'm going to summon a GF. Now, I've got 3 GFs junctioned to Squall here. The way that GFs work is, as you can see, they've got their own HP. So, if I summon Ifrit with Squall, see this here? Just pause it. See, now that Ifrit is charging, and I don't do this because, like I said, if you know the game well enough, you don't need to do this, it's actually a bad thing, but if you're new to the game, this will help you get through. There's the number there represents Ifrit's health. Now, if Squall gets attacked while Ifrit is charging, Ifrit will actually lose health as opposed to Squall. So I suppose in a way you could use GFs as kind of like a temporary barrier. Not all GFs do the same thing. Although a lot of GFs do attack, some of them do like different things, like Siren silences the enemies, and Diablos does a percentage of the enemy's health, and Carbuncle puts Reflect on your party. Not as much variety as what there is in 6, because, I mean, if you want variety in summons, 6 is the place to go, but still. You don't really summon, well, if you're good enough at this game, you won't be summoning. Also, pause again, the speed that this bar goes down is dependent on the GF's compatibility, and if a character uses a GF more and more, their compatibility increases. And it can also, the compatibility can also decrease depending on like if you use like the GF of the opposite element or something like that. And you can use items to make it go up and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, Ifrit's charging, and now I'm summoning Ifrit. If you've learned Boost, which I haven't of course, you can hold select and mash the square button to increase their strength. But I don't have that, so that's not what I'm doing here. And 500 damage. Not as effective as what Angelo was, but then you have to remember like how the leveling mechanics of this game work. Actually, see if I can card him. Which will be a shame because I'm going to have to restart anyway because I've killed 2 enemies and I don't want to gain their experience. No. Anyway, let's, just for the sake of it, use an Ultima spell. I have no idea what Renoa's magic stat is like, but whatever. Here we have Ultima. I've only got 6 of them, but I'm not saving it, so whatever, I guess. Yeah, they've got quite a bit of health. Yeah, I'll just run away. There's no point in me finishing that battle. I've pretty much shown what I wanted to show there. Got experience, didn't want to. So I'm not going to be saving. Do you have to receive Quetzalcoatl leveled up from the experience? And GFs, leveling up GFs is a bit odd because GFs level up faster if you give them to a character who has fewer GFs. So say if I give Squall just Quetzalcoatl, Quetzalcoatl would level up faster than if I give Squall, Quetzalcoatl, Shiva and Ifrit. But I'm not saving that because I gained experience when I did not want it. What else is there to mention? I'm going to go through the card game. Not right now though. There is an in-game tutorial where you can basically have a look and it'll tell you how all the different things work and everything, which is kind of neat. I can't think of many other games where it actually has like tutorials built in. At least not back in the 90s. And by the way, online help doesn't actually mean online because this is like, you know, a game from the late 90s, so it's just different like tutorials. You can select it and it'll go through like all the different tutorials, like how to junction and everything. But hey, I'm the tutorial here, not this game. You've got the card game rules, so it tells you the general rules of the card game, which I'll be going over. Test, I'll talk about that in a moment. Icon explanation tells you what each of the icons means. As you can see there, the different abilities like I was telling you about, and different stats, different status effects, and different elements and all that sort of lovely stuff. And you got the information corner, so like about status. Status signifies status effects such as poison and petrify, yada yada yada. Menu. Ooh, what do different things in the menu mean? It's like an instruction manual in the game, which is weird. Tests are actually quite strange. It's a strange mechanic as to how you actually earn money in this game. I don't actually think it's that good of a mechanic, but it's okay. Basically, you earn money by being a high rank and receiving a paycheck. So if out here, as you can see, my seed rank is currently 15, and that means that after every so much like steps, I will receive the pay of a rank 15 seed. And you can increase the rank by taking tests or doing missions properly, and you can also lower the rank by like ignoring the mission that you've been set and stuff like that. So see, it says here, Squall is at level 7, you can't take anything above level 7, please level up first and try again. So I'm not doing that yet. So you can look through previous test. The draw command extracts magic from enemies, yes. GF stands for Guardian Fighter, no, it's Guardian Force. There are a total of 8 elemental attributes, yes. In battle, highest fill stat causes more physical damage, yes. HP J junction ability, yes. You can't assign specific abilities for your GF to learn, no you can. Magic uses MP, no not in this game. You can name your GFs, yes you can. You can wear protective gear. See, some of these are rather ambiguous in that game mechanic wise you can't buy equipment other than just your weapon and stuff, but at the same time, you know, sometimes different missions you wear different uniforms, so it's kind of like ambiguous. But no, GFs level up with AP, no they level up with experience, but they gain their abilities with AP. End of review, you have mastered everything in the level 1 test. Yes I have. You could just look up the answers online, I suppose, if you wanted to. Okay, limit breaks. Each character has limit breaks differently. Squall, actually, hold on, I'll go through each of these screens. So here you can see what I've set to elemental and status attack and defense. That's his compatibility with each of the GFs. Not that it matters to me because I'm not summoning. And then you get the last bit here, which is the limit break screen, and that's different for every character. For Squall, it's Renzokuken, and basically when you use the limit break you have to press R1 at the right time, and at the end of it he might use one of his specials. He has 4 specials and you unlock them by upgrading your weapon, and the more powerful weapon that you get, the more powerful specials that you unlock. So that makes sense. So you're not always guaranteed to use his most powerful limit break. He has 4 specials, and his most powerful one is Lionheart, and you need his ultimate weapon to do that. Weapons for all of the characters are useless, because weapons increase they increase stats but by very little, so there's not too much point. But for Squall, it unlocks extra abilities in his limit break. Also, a unique feature with Squall is that when you attack with Squall, if you press R1 as you attack, it does extra damage because of the weapon he has. Right, let's do this in the somewhat of an order that you get the characters. Quistis is rather simple. She's like a blue mage. She just has like a list of blue magic. The way that it works is that you get items in the game and you use them, and once you've used them, you can then basically just unlocks that ability for Quistis. Now Quistis is perhaps the easiest to use, but one of the least interesting, in that for her to use blue magic, all you do is select the attack you want to do, no special like combinations or anything like that. And I'm missing 2 here. So yeah, rather simple, but blue magic isn't actually as good in this game as I usually like it to be. Well, at least not to my experience. I usually really like blue magic, especially in Final Fantasy V. Next who you get is Zell. Now in Zells you actually have to pull off different button combinations to be able to pull off different attacks, and you unlock, if you find Combat King magazines in the game, it will unlock extra abilities for him. So you can do like combinations of like attacks. So you do one and then the time will tick down and then you have to like pull off another. You can, there is a way to do a lot of damage with Zell later on if you boost his strength really high, and you can basically like cycle through like just a couple of these abilities over and over again. It's quite easy, but you got to pay attention quite a lot. Who is next? Selfie. Now, Selfie's limit break is slot. Actually, I forgot to mention that Zell's limit break is called duel. Selfie's limit break is slot, and this one is quite interesting. And by doing this, you can use the only ability in the game that guarantees you victory, but it's not very easy to pull off. The way that slot works with Selfie is that you cycle through a bunch of magic spells. It'll like show you a magic spell, and you can select either do over or cast. And do over means like pick another random spell to cast, and how many times is random as well. So it might be like fire 1 time, do over, and then it'll be like blizzard 2 times, do over, aura 2 times, and then you keep going until you find the one that you want to use, and then you use cast. There's 4 special unique ones. 4 special unique magic that you can only actually activate through using Selfie's limit break, of which in this game I've only managed to get 1 of them so far. I haven't really used it. Full Cure, Wall, Rapture and the End. If you manage to use the End, it will kill anything, regardless, like even the most powerful enemies, no matter what. If you manage to use the End, you've won basically. Of course, the interesting thing about this limit break is that you're constantly racing against like the timer, like enemies are attacking you, so you don't want to like hang around. You want to like click do over as soon as you see the spell that you don't want to cast. You want to go do over, do over, do over. But by going too fast, you risk the possibility that you'll see one that you want and then you'll accidentally skip past it. I've done that before, where I've been like really focusing, like do over, do over, do over. I've got to the end, and without thinking, I click do over, and I'm like and then like you just lose your mind because you skipped past the one that you wanted. So you've got to be really careful with it. And I think it's really interesting, that particular limit break. Who is after Rinoa? Rinoa uses her dog, which is called Angelo, and you basically find the way that Angelo works is that you her limit break is called Combine, by the way. You find magazines called Pet Pals, and you can buy them later on as well, and they unlock different moves for Angelo to learn. And it's kind of like the GFs in that you select an ability for him to learn, apart from instead of getting it through AP, he'll get it through walking around. And so you walk around with Angelo and eventually he'll learn the ability. So taking the doggy for a walk teaches him new tricks. I never thought about it that way before, but that's how it works. You literally get his abilities by taking him for walks. I'd never thought about that before. But when you actually use Reno's limit break, Angelo will actually do one of the abilities that you've learned at random. So, to an extent, you've got to be careful of which ones you learn. And the final character, Irvine, is Shot. And the way that it works with him is that you have to collect different types of ammo. Now, like most items, ammo can also be used to like create weapons, and can also be used to like refine into magic and all that sort of stuff. And there is more use for ammo. I think, for example, to get Squall's ultimate weapon, you need to actually use up some pulse ammo for it, so you need to actually save it. But basically, you choose a different type of shot that you want to do, because Irvine uses a shotgun, and then you've got time, and you've got to keep pressing R1 over and over, and you will do different types of different types of damage. Like scatter shot, you can't do it as much, but it deals damage to all enemies. And like dark shot, like it says there, deals a status effect. And fast shot is quicker, but of course, you know, you've got limited ammo, so quick shot is probably the best, but you'll run out of ammo faster by doing that. Armor shot, defense ignoring damage to one enemy. So yes. Now there are other characters in the game who you will play as temporarily, and they have their own limit breaks, but all the limit breaks of all the extra side characters, they're all very, very basic, so there's no need to go through them. They are literally like attack an enemy or attack all enemies, literally. So I don't need to go over those particular limit breaks. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this segment, and and for I think the final part of this Final Fantasy VIII overview, I'm going to talk you through the card game and one of the ways of which you acquire cards. And the card game is really central to this game. It comes across as like a side quest, but it's actually really, really important if you do want to get the items and the magic. So, I will meet you by a character who is willing to play a card game. And we're back, everyone. This is Balam Garden. This is the back end of the library in Balam Garden, and I'm going to play some cards with someone here. But before I do that, I just want to make a few notes. First of all, just like a random thought. I know that I said that the PC version has weaker music, and I think that really, really shows in Balam Garden, because this music is usually really good and all that, but this version just isn't. Also, I just wanted to go through a few last things with the GFs. So I just want to talk about how you actually acquire the GFs, because I realised I kind of skimmed over that earlier. Well, the first 3 GFs you actually can't avoid. Some of the GFs are kind of like side quests, I suppose, where you can choose to not get them, but in most cases I don't see why you wouldn't, especially like some of the earlier ones. But a good chunk of them you actually draw from bosses, like, you know how I showed drawing magic before? You actually draw the GF from a boss, and this means if you don't draw the GF from that boss, you've missed it, and you won't get another chance until like the end of the game nearly. And I think I don't really like that thing. I think that I'd rather the game just give it to you rather than allows you to go right past it and like just completely miss it. Like, you know, just give it to you at the end of a boss. But no. Some of them are kind of like side quests and stuff, especially like the final bunch here. Like the last, like 7 or so, 6 or so. I think the last 6 are actually like out, like hidden somewhere, and you have to go out and find them. And some of them are just kind of like side quests, but not huge side quests, and most of the others you just draw them from bosses. So that's how you acquire the GFs. I've got to say I don't like the missable nature of that, but I'm perfectly fine with the slow accumulation of GFs over time when you hit certain milestones. I think that's really good, because you hit certain points and, like, say for example, you've just got Carbuncle and you want to know where it's got, so you open up its abilities and you have a look and you're like, ooh, that looks interesting, and gives you new stuff to play around with. The other thing I wanted to mention about GFs, and I didn't really mention this before because this isn't something that you would do naturally, but if you wanted to take this game to like the extreme and you wanted to like completely max out and make everyone really powerful, you can really do some interesting things manipulating your GFs. The final GF that you get, this one here, in this empty space, has a refine ability called GF Ability Med Refine, and what that does is it allows you to create items that teach your GF's abilities. Now, there are items in the game, and you can get them other ways, although using that is perhaps the most efficient, I don't know, proficient way of doing it, maybe? Whereas the other ways are just as valid, I guess. But you can use an item on a GF to teach it an ability. So say, for example, because the Cordal has 4 empty slots here, which would be filled out by other abilities eventually if I learn them, but if I want to, I could go to item, and I could go to status attack, and teach him the ability status attack junction, or I could go to medkit and teach him the treatment ability, which is a command ability that naturally only Siren can learn, but you can teach it by using these items. Healing Ring teaches the recover ability, which is a command. And some of them are very simple, like some mag plus 20 and 40% and all that. Now, I've got to say that using these items to give the GF's abilities is really good. It's really nice, but you must be careful because by doing this, you can skip out on the conditions for them to learn specific abilities. Say he's got like 4 slots there. If I actually just give him 4 new abilities now, and he had, say, another ability coming up, if I taught him something, then he wouldn't be able to learn it. For example, card. Once you've learnt card, then card mod becomes available for you to learn. But if, say, you weren't to learn card, then you were to like just give him a bunch of abilities and then learn card, you would not learn card mod because the space that it's like blanked out. You've like got rid of the space that would allow card mod to be added, so you can effectively lose out on abilities if you do that too hastily without doing some research first. In addition, you can where is it? You can use an item called Amnesia Greens, if I can find them, yep, there, and that can make GFs forget abilities, so you can actually delete abilities from GFs. So if all of your GFs that is, have like maxed out all their abilities, and you're able to have, or even create, items that teach GFs new abilities, you can really like go crazy with this. You can like delete certain abilities, and some abilities it's worth deleting because they lose their purpose. Like for example with Ifrit, Elemental Defense Junction times 2. Well, once he's got times 2, there's no point of him having the first one because that doesn't do anything. So that becomes pointless. And depending on how extreme you want to take it, you can eventually make lots of things really interesting. Of course, you got to try to remember not to delete their unique abilities because that could really screw you over. Or just deleting abilities before they've learnt everything could screw you over. And another example is, for example, with Diablos. Once you've learnt Enk None, which reduces all encounters, I suppose you could get rid of Enk Half, which cuts the encounter rate by half, because there's not really much point to having it there. But still, you got to be careful. And what you can do is let me get my sentences straight here. Also to take note is that some abilities can become useless depending on what you've done in the game. So say for example HPJ, which allows you to junction HP to characters. Say for example you were to gather up enough HP plus items, which you can do by the way through some nice trickery of abilities. Say if you were to get enough HP boosting items so that every character every unjunctioned character had their health at 9,999, and you could just skip through and they all had max health without junctioning any magic to their HP. If everyone was maxed out HP, like with their raw HP unjunctioned, you could get rid of all the HPJs, all their like HP plus so and so percentage abilities, and you could make room for some more interesting abilities that could really counteract them. Oh, what's the word? That could really like fill in the spaces that you've of the abilities that you've just deleted that have become useless. So, for example, Strength, Vitality, and Spirit J. If you max out everyone's stats of those naturally, you can delete those and give Shiva 3 extra abilities, and all these like plus percentages like Spirit plus 20%, Spirit plus 40%. You could get, if you were to max out everyone's Spirit naturally, completely unjunctioned, you could get rid of these because they become useless. Another example would be like Diablos. Ability times 3 is great, but if you manage to get a Rosetta Stone, you could teach him ability times 4 and delete ability times 3, and so you know, you've just given yourself more abilities for the character whilst not taking up any more space. And another good example is the bonus abilities. Like for Ifrit here we have Strength bonus, which adds an extra strength to you when you level up. Now, if all of your characters reach level 100, you can get rid of all these bonus abilities, and there's one GF in the game, Cactuar. I don't know how you put. Is it Cactuar? I usually say Cactuar, but I suppose it's spelled Cactuar. But that GF has like a bunch of these like leveling up bonus abilities, and you could delete them if you get everyone to level 100. So if you were to go to the extreme, and note that this is the extreme circumstances that I'm talking about, you could really mess about with your GFs. But that doesn't happen until, like, you know, you're really trying to get like the best of everything, and it can become really intense. Like, look, HPJ, Vitality J, Magic J, if you were to max out all those natural stats and those were to become useless, then you can make way for 3 more ability slots for Carbuncle. And even these basic Magic GF draw an item ones, every GF has them. You could get rid of like a couple of them and, you know, just make more space. It's really interesting as to just how extreme you can take it. But just to take a note that what I said there is like really high-end stuff. And I just think it's interesting to point out what the really high-end stuff is. So anyway, onto the card game, and this I think is the final thing that I want to mention. I don't think there's anything else to mention. I'm not going to go over the story or anything because this is about the mechanics. Just had a sip of a drink there. Bit thirsty after talking, you know. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about the story or anything, and I'm just going to skip right to the cards, because the card game plays a big part in Final Fantasy VIII. These are all the cards I've got. Now, a lot of these are at 0 because I've refined them. I've refined them into items, and that's how I got all my magic really early on. Now, every card has 4 numbers, a top, a bottom, a left and a right number, and an element. Elements won't matter for the most part. And as you can see, the higher level, the higher these numbers are. And I'll explain what these numbers are when I get to the actual game. And then you've got like these special high level cards at the end here, which are like your GFs and your actual like characters. And also for reference, that in this card game, the letter A means 10. I suppose it's kind of like playing cards where the ace means 11, but in this case it means 10. But first of all, I'll just go over the basic rules of the game. And there are variations of the rules of the game, but I'm just going to play a game against her. So you want to play with me? Yes. Now this actual music hasn't changed too much from the original, from the PlayStation version. Now, we've got 2 rules here, open, and the trade rule is diff. You can have a variation of different rules. I'll explain them later. Although I'll say open basically means that you can see your opponent's hand, and diff is about what the winner gets as a prize. So you choose 5 cards. So I'm just going to choose my top 5 here. And we see each other's cards. And she's going first, and she's placing the snow line in the top left corner there. Now, each of these numbers indicates a strength. So her bottom strength is 5, but her right strength is 1. So what I need to do is I need to pick a card and put it somewhere on the grid. And if one of the sides of mine is bigger than the adjacent side of hers, then it flips. So for example, I've got a Quistis card here, and I can put it there. I'll move the cursor out of the way. If I put the Quistis card there, see the 2 on the left will beat her 1 on the right. So I put the Quistis card there, and it flips. And there's the score, so I've got 6, and she's got 5, but she got her Behemoth, and her 7 beat Quistis' 6, so she won that. Now you can also play defensively, so for example I could put Diablos in the corner there, and she puts an Adamantoise there, but that's quite a bad thing to do because, just looking at what's going on here, I can flip that with Cypher. Cypher's protected at the bottom with the A, right? She hasn't gone to flip that. She could have flipped that with the Torama, with this top the 7, but she's gone for the Anaconda, which has the 5 at the top, and has a 5 on the left. So I can't, with Zell or Minotaur, I can't actually flip it. But it's okay because I'm winning. If I put Minotaur here, she only has 1 place left to put it, and I win. And the diff rule means that the difference in your scores means that that's how many cards you win. So I had 6 points at the end, she had 4, so I can take 2 of her cards. So, for example, I'll take the Adamantoise and the Behemoth. And that's the general rules of how you play cards. Now, I'm going to talk about a few separate rules that you can have, including the different trade rules. The first rule, open, doesn't always have to be there. If the rule open is there, it means you can see your opponent's hand, but you can't. See your opponent's hand if the rule is if the open rule isn't there. I'm just going to select my 5 cards here, and those are her 5 cards. Not fantastic, but you know, I could easily beat them. Now, there is also the elemental rule, and the elemental rule is that some of these tiles will randomly have an element on them, and as you can see in the top right corner of these cards, for the Minotaur there, it's this rocky thing. That means it's an earth elemental, and for the Chimera here, it's the water droplet because it's a water elemental. If your card matches the element, all of your numbers get a +1 bonus, but if it doesn't match the element, it gets a -1 loss. So you need to take that into account. Now there's 2 rules which I hate. Well, there's a few rules that I hate, and these still aren't the ones I hate the most, but one of the rules is same. And the same rule is, and this is, took me, don't worry if you don't get this straight away, it took me a while to fully get this. If you match a card where 2 of its adjacent sides match as opposed to beat, then it will flip both of them, and then that will set off a combo to continue flipping when the flipping conditions are met. So say, for example, I've got a Zell card here. Zell has an 8 at the top and a 6 at the left. But say if Zell had an 8 at the top and a 2 at the left, if I put Zell there, in the middle, it would be the same for the Diablos, and it would be the same for the Bull here. That is Bull, isn't it? Yeah. And then it would be the same for this Bull. So then that would be the same condition, so then that would flip, and because that 6 is greater than that 3 on that Grat would also flip. And then you've got the plus rule, which is kind of the same, apart from the numbers don't have to match exactly, they just have to add up to the same. So for example, 8 and 2 adds up to 10. Shouldn't have taken me long to figure that one out. So if instead of 8 and 6 it had 1 and 9, that also adds up to 10. I could put that there, and then the plus rule would be would work, and then it would set off the combo as usual. I don't like those rules because the computer takes advantage of them, and I'm not really good enough at the game to really think about it too far ahead. And then there's also the same wall rule, where it's the same rule, or the plus wall rule, where it's the same as the same or the plus rule, but where the whole wall is like an A. So say like I put like say if like this wall was an A and that's a 2 there. If I had like a card with like an A on the left and a 2 on the top, that would be the same rule matching that rule, which would then continue to flip that grat. I don't like those rules, but they're not the worst. Yeah. GIM47N. I don't know. There's quite a few like robots in this game that have like serial numbers as like their names. Another rule is sudden death, and sudden death is where if you draw, you play again until someone wins, and you use the cards that were flipped to your side, and I don't like that either. Now I also want to mention there's a few more rules to go over, and I'll go over those soon. Namely random and the trade rules, and no one likes any of those. But I just want to point out, strategically, I used to think that the corners, the cards with corner strengths were always best. So see here, the Minotaur has like a 9/9 corner, because you always like shove it in the corner and like have a lot of defense. But since then, in recent times, I've actually figured out that cards with strong opposite sides can also be very good. So see here, the Quizzes card has a 9 at the top and an 8 at the bottom. If I put, that means I can put this anywhere. I mean, say if it was her turn to go first and I had that, that means I could force her into what I would call a vertical war, because Quistis is like, you know, got like a really good vertical strength. So wherever she put her Gizzard, which has the weakest vertical strength you could possibly have, 1 and 1, Quistis could just jump in and, you know, take it. But I'm talking like, you know, cards stronger than Gizzard. I'm just going to put it there. And she's going to use Gizzard and get nothing. And that diff rule, that means I win 4 cards. So I choose Bull, that thing, Chimera, and Gizzard. Now, bad things about this card game. I think the card game's great, and it's used to influence you to play lots of cards, to get lots of cards so you can get the items and therefore the magic to junction. Few bad things about them though is first of all there's the random rule. Now here, you know, I've got a few cards, like I got the Bull there. The random rule is where you don't select your cards are selected at random based on what you've got. This is really annoying, because if you've got weak cards, then you might end up using them, so it's often best to refine as many of these cards as you can, like, you know, like I'm doing here, just like, oh, refine. Problem is that you've got cards that you can't refine, like, say, these behemoths here. It takes 10 of them to refine into 1 barrier, but I've only got 4 of them, so if I don't want to use behemoths, then it doesn't matter, I've still got to build them up. And I suppose it's like, I mean, take something weaker like Turtopods. I've got to get 5 of those in order to get rid of them. So you can't just rely on your best cards, which I suppose is kind of a good thing, because I've also got a kind of a problem with the way that you get the cards as well, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So that's really annoying, because what I would have preferred is where instead of having all of your cards selected random, you choose like a deck of like 30 cards, and then they randomly like give you 5 from that deck, I thought that would have been like a lot better, because otherwise you are actively punished for owning more cards, and I think that's a really, really bad thing. And everyone hates random. There's no one person ever who likes the random rule. There's the trade rules. And I'm just going to go into one more game here. And see, the trade rule is diff. And there's different trade rules that you can have in the game. There's the one, whereby whoever wins that gets to pick one of their cards. There's the diff rule, where the winner takes the difference between the points. There's the all rule, where whoever wins takes all of their opponent's cards. And then there's the direct rule. And the direct rule basically is where whatever cards are yours from being flipped or flipping, that's what you get, regardless of whether you win or not. If you can win and still lose a card that you had because of that. And so direct isn't very desirable. So they're the basic rules of the card game, and it can get really, I think it's really good. I mean, I know people say like, oh, it's these stupid mini games in these RPGs, they're stupid and waste of time. And I would mostly agree, but I think the card game, I think Triple Triad, this card game, is by far the best mini game in an RPG. From what I've experienced, it's like, you know, it's got a purpose to it. It's enjoyable. It's strategic. And I'm sure, I'm not saying it's the best. I mean, I'm sure there's better ones. But when I think of like good mini games in an RPG, I think of Triple Triad. Okay, but one problem I do have with this game, with Triple Triad, and this is, I mean, the card game itself I think is fantastic. You know, the whole like matching numbers and flipping cards and stuff I think is brilliant. But there's a few aspects of it I really don't like. First of all, the rare cards. The rare cards from, I think it's like level 8 onwards, or maybe level 7 onwards, I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's some cards that are unique, like, for example, Diablos and the Angelo Minimogue and all the GFs and the character cards. Now, what's special about these is that you can only find them in one place in the game. Well, technically not, but for me to explain it, basically it's like one place you can only find them. And so some of them you have to win from certain characters. Like, for example, to get the Cypher card, you have to win it from the headmaster of the Balam Garden, Headmaster Sid. And to get Zel's card, you have to get it from his mother, and Quistis, you have to get it from someone in her fan club. Yes, she has a fan club. And some of them you just get by just like the natural cause of things. Like Ifrit, you just get by beating Ifrit, and Sacred and Minotaur, you just get those by beating them again still. The problem I have with this is that when you get these cards, other than like the random rule, you have no reason to use any of the cards in the actual card game itself. So the whole purpose of like collecting cards for the purpose of building up a more like, you know, strategic hand for when you're playing, it just stops applying, because you get cards along the way that are just the best. And another thing that really annoys me about this is that some of the conditions you have to meet in order to get some of these cards is just outrageous. I've never had them all before. There's like somewhere you've got to like purposefully lose to someone and then go somewhere else and hope that someone's been somewhere else and then win a card back so that you can then win a different card. And note that this is like, while the random rule is in place, you have to like do all these things where like you have to like talk to people like over and over again to try to like persuade them to not like use certain rules. And I think that whole like the whole side quest of collecting all the cards is really I don't know, I think it just ruins the card game as a whole, because the card game itself is fantastic. I would rather you just like, you start off, you only have like level 1 cards, and then you eventually find people with only like level 2s and then like level 3s, and you just keep working on from there. I think that would be fantastic, but I think that there's a few little things of this card game that they've done which just doesn't work very well. But overall, the card game itself is really good, and you can actually, just to note that you can actually, by playing cards early in the game and like spreading the diff rule so that you actually get more than 1 card per victory, you can actually get some really good cards early on, and thanks to the nature, like the complex nature and just how much variations there are in like what you can have like with the GF abilities, you can end up with some really powerful magic early in the game, like tornadoes you can get from Abyss Worms. Where are they? Yeah, see, it's only level 3 card. Abyss Worms you can get, what is it? Is it windmills? You can like turn them into windmills. I think it's windmills. And it's like you can turn those into like tornadoes. And you can get really powerful magic early on. Even like pains, and that's crazy. You don't get pains until like ages. I mean, you can't get ultimate or holy, I don't think, but you can really manipulate the card game. So, I think that's everything. GF's explained, junctioning and everything. Yeah. In case you're wondering about this menu, I think the only thing I haven't gone through other than item, although that's pretty self-explanatory, that's just your items. The only one I think I haven't really gone through is switch, and this isn't really like much because it's basically switching between party members or switching like junctions between certain characters. So like just like quickly switch GFs and junctions on the fly, which is useful. Yeah, config is just the basic settings. Yeah, so that's my overview of Final Fantasy VIII. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something about this game. That's the whole point of this. I want to like teach about like the core mechanics of a game, and I hope that I've done that right now. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.